Hello, Urbandale. You guys can have a seat because I think our friends in the media said they couldn't see. So, first of all, it is great to be here. Thank you to everybody that showed up. We have had a great time. We had a great announcement in South Carolina. We went and had full rooms in New Hampshire. And what I can tell you is that Americans are ready for new leadership. So I want to start by telling you can clap to that because we can't say that enough. I want to start telling you a little bit about myself, and then we'll go into what we're trying to do. So I was born and raised in a small rural town in South Carolina, 2,500 people, 2 stoplights. You couldn't think about doing something wrong without somebody already telling your mom. We were the only Indian family in that small town. We weren't white enough to be white. We weren't black enough to be black. They didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. But my parents knew. My parents knew why we were there. Because my parents knew that we lived in the best country in the world. And they told my brothers, my sister, and me every day that even on our worst day, we were blessed to live in America. When I would get teased on the playground, I would come home and my mom would say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. And it's amazing how that town grew to accept us and came to love us. And my mom started a business out of the living room of our home. I started doing the books for my parents' business at the age of 13. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that wasn't normal. Now I tell them that was child labor. But you know, the reason that I have such an appreciation for Royal Flooring and any of our businesses is because when I had to figure out what to pay, when times were tough, we stretched that dollar. We got creative and we figured out how to make it work. And when times were good, we never celebrated because we knew the bad times would happen again. Went on to Clemson, graduated with a degree in accounting. Met my husband, go Tigers, met my husband my first weekend at Clemson. We dated for 7 years, been married for 26. We have 2 children. I went on and worked in the corporate arena, and then I came back home to the family business. And I remember one day I was telling my mom how hard it was to make $1 and how easy it was for government to take it. She said, don't complain about it, do something about it. I did not know you weren't supposed to run against a 30-year incumbent in a primary. But ignorance is bliss. Once I realized he was related to half the district, my husband got in the driver's seat, I got in the passenger seat, we put our 2 little ones in the back seat, and we started knocking on doors. And what I told the district was, this is no disrespect to the incumbent, but I think we have way too many lawyers in the State House, and they needed a really good accountant. So even though I was underestimated, we were able to defeat the longest-serving legislator in South Carolina, and then we got to work. And after being in the State House a few years, there was something that happened that changed everything. In South Carolina, when you would pass legislation, it would pass on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. But one day, with our Republican House, our Republican Senate, and our Republican governor, they passed a piece of legislation that would give legislators a pay raise. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, silence. The ayes have it. Yet to this day, you can't find one legislator that says they voted themselves a pay raise. I got really upset, and I went to the Speaker of the House, and I said, this is why the people don't trust us. And I filed a bill that said anything important enough to be debated on the floor of the House or the Senate was important enough for the people to know how their legislator voted. The Speaker said, put the bill away. We don't need to have it. We will decide what the people need to see and what they don't. I remember going home to my husband saying, if I can't even get legislative votes on the record, what am I doing? And he said, then fight. So I went around the state and I said, did you know of all the bills passed in the House, only 8% were on the record? Did you know of all the bills passed in the Senate, only 1% was on the record? So if you didn't know how your House member voted 92% of the time, if you didn't know how your senator voted 99% of the time, How did you know who to vote for when you went to the polls? The people of South Carolina were shocked. To put this into perspective, my first year in office, I was chairman of the freshman class. My second year, I was majority whip. My third year, I was on a powerful business committee. And my fourth year, I was subcommittee chair of banking. The year that I wouldn't put the bill away, they stripped me of everything. I could take the well, and no one would listen. I could sponsor a bill, and no one would co-sponsor. So I ran for governor. And I'm proud to say one of the first bills we signed into law is now in South Carolina. Anything debated on the floor of the House or the Senate requires a legislative vote on the record, and we took it a step further. We did it on every section of the budget. And when it was time for me to sign that legislation, Kim, you'll appreciate this, we signed it in the State House, blaring music, and it was Pat Benatar's "Hit Me With Your Best Shot." So from there, I became governor, and we took a state that was hurting. It was in double-digit unemployment. We had all of our textile jobs had gone overseas, and South Carolina was not, they didn't love themselves, they didn't fight for themselves, they didn't believe in themselves. And so we changed the culture. We started selling. And before I left being governor, we were building planes with Boeing. We were building more BMWs than any place in the world. We brought in Mercedes-Benz, Volvo. We had 5 international tire companies, and they were calling us the Beast of the Southeast, which I still love. President Trump called and asked me if I would be his ambassador at the United Nations, and that was the time where I said, I don't even know what the United Nations does. I just know everybody hates it. But I went on to do it. I made a point to go in, and I didn't study the do's and don'ts of the UN. I wanted to go in with fresh eyes. I wanted to break it. I wanted to make sure that we were going and taking the kick me sign off of the United States' back. And I said, we are going to make sure for everybody that has our backs, we're going to have your back. But for anybody that doesn't have our backs, we were taking names, and that we did. I will tell you that I made a point to, when I went to the United Nations, I told everybody what America was for and what America was against. I didn't care if they didn't like me, but I wanted them to respect America. That was what was important, and we did that. We passed the largest sanctions on any country in a generation with North Korea. We got out of the Iran deal. And then when we moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, we were vilified on the eyes of the world stage. And I was proud to issue the first veto by the United States to condemn that. And then they put us in front of all 193 countries, and they said that the U.S. didn't have the right to do it. And I said, the U.S. has the right to put our embassy wherever we want. We always put it in the capital of every country. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that's what we did, and we were going to do that. I was proud to say that 68 countries didn't vote against us, which, believe it or not, at the UN is a win. But I was mad. I was mad when I left there, and I went to my office, and I told my staff, I said, I want you to put a book together. And in that book, I want you to list all 193 countries. The second column, I want you to put the percentage of times these countries voted with the U.S. and opposed to the U.S. And then I want the third column to be how much foreign aid we give them. I took that book and I gave it to President Trump. He lost his mind. He totally lost his mind, flipping pages, yelling out countries. And my point to him was, I'm not saying you give foreign aid based on a percentage vote at the UN, but that should be one of the things we consider. The United States has to stop trying to buy friends. You can't buy a country that says death to America. It's not going to happen. Quit giving them money. We were giving Pakistan $1 billion in military aid, and they were harboring terrorists trying to kill our soldiers. We stopped giving that $1 billion to Pakistan. And what I saw at the UN was they would love to bash us every chance they got, but then they'd turn around and have their hand out. So we've got to start being smart in the way that we handle that. So now we're sitting in a situation where Joe Biden is president. How many of you love that? And we're in a world of hurt. So when you look at the situation, you look at our economy, you see inflation is high. We are $31 trillion in debt. Our kids will not forgive us for this. We see earmarks are now the norm, and Republicans and Democrats both did that. We are paying 15% of our federal budget's interest. You've got 1 in 6 Americans can't pay their utility bill. 50% of Americans say they're not making as much as they were a year ago. 60% of Americans are in credit card debt. And in October, 60% of small business owners, which are the heartbeat of our economy, could not make their rent payment. That's what's happening in the economy in America. Then you go and you look at education. Our children have fallen so far back that we don't know if we can catch them up. Pre-COVID, 70% of 8th graders in our country were not proficient in reading. Think about that. Pre-COVID, 66% of 8th graders were not proficient in math. So you've got an issue where kids can't read or do math, and that's before COVID. Then you go and you add all these lockdowns, and you go and you set them back even further. We've got some work to do. And instead, what's happening? You've got all this woke ideology that left the universities and now is in the elementary schools. You've got critical race theory, where if you've got a 5-year-old girl going into kindergarten, if she's white, you're telling her she's bad. And if she's brown or black, you're telling her she'll never be good enough and she'll always be a victim. That's abusive. And then you had the whole country up in arms because of a Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, right? Which basically just said, you don't need to talk about gender before 3rd grade. Well, I don't even think that goes far enough. When I was growing up, you didn't have sex ed until 7th grade. And even then, your dad had to sign a permission slip, and my dad wouldn't sign it, so I was the uncool kid in the classroom next door. We don't need to be telling our kids about gender. That's for the parents to do. That has nothing to do with schools. And then you look at the security situation. You know, if you say defund the police, it's not that you hurt the morale of law enforcement. You do that. But you give criminals a green flag to do whatever it is they want to do. And now look at the crime on our streets. It's bad. And you look at our border. Now, my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by what's happening on the border. We've had enough people cross that border that's larger than Chicago and Philadelphia combined. We've had over 100 terrorists that we know of. We've had enough fentanyl cross that border that would kill every single American. Every state in America is now a border state, and no one's doing anything about it. And then you look at our foreign policy situation. Never in my life did I think that we would look at the sky, that Americans would look up at the sky, and our children would look up at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at them. It is a national embarrassment that that happened. But do you know why that happened? It all started, if we would not have had that debacle in Afghanistan, none of this would have happened. I'm the wife of a combat veteran. He deployed to Afghanistan while I was governor, by the way. He left me as a single mom governor, and yes, we're still married. The idea that we would leave Bagram Air Force Base in the middle of the night without telling our allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with us for decades because we asked them to be there. Think about what that told our friends. More importantly, think about what that told our enemies. And then you go and you have, it started with Obama, Russia going to Ukraine, no one does anything about it. They do it again, Biden slow to the take, does nothing about it, and he's now creeping in to do it. You've got him falling all over himself to get back into the Iran deal. And then you've got China sitting there basically doing whatever they want, and then they have the nerve to scold us for shooting down the balloon. This is the weakest we have ever looked, and it's the most dangerous it has ever been. So when you look at that, and you look at that situation, what I will tell you is I don't need to tell you how bad it is, because you feel it. And what I will tell you is this is now the time we stop complaining. Stop complaining. It's bad. We know it. Now let's start to fix it. So how do we fix it? Let's talk about the solutions, because I think we're better if we talk about solutions than problems, right? So the first thing we do is we realize that Washington, D.C. has a spending problem, and they need to be put on a diet. There is no more spending. If I, as governor of South Carolina, can balance a budget, if you can balance your home budgets, we have got to get D.C. to balance a budget. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. These earmarks have to stop. I don't care what they're for. You can't have $12 million for a baseball stadium in New York, $15 million for New Jersey to get the World Cup, $6.5 million for golf courses in Colorado. There was another couple of million for a hip-hop museum in New York. All of this has to stop. We don't have enough to buy groceries. You can't turn around and have our money, our taxpayer dollars, going to things like this. And if our entire budget, 15% of it is interest, quit borrowing money. When you look at the inflation situation and you see how much inflation has gone up, that's when you go back and you say, let's stop buying things and let's start manufacturing in America, just like we did in South Carolina. And if you really want to help American families and you really want to reduce inflation, open up the energy sector. We need to be exporting as much liquefied natural gas as we can. All of those things will make a difference. Then when it comes to education, we have to go back. In South Carolina, I made a point to tell the people of South Carolina, if a child can't read by 3rd grade, they're 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we passed a bill that said any child that couldn't read by 3rd grade, we were holding them back. We were doing reading remediation. We included their parents. We did summer school, and we got them back on track. That should be applied around this country until we can make sure all of our kids can read. I have said for a long time, and I mean it, you have the best governor in the country, hands down. She has proven it time and time again, whether it has been with taxes, whether it has been with reform, and yes, she just did it in the thing that matters the most when it comes to education. We would not have problems in education if we put education back where it needs to be, in the hands of the parents. We have to have school choice all over this country. And we need to make sure we never close schools ever again, no matter what. Let's get vocational programs back in high school, and let's teach our kids they don't have to go to college. They're great jobs in America that they can make things. And when it comes to our universities, if they want to keep taking Chinese money, then they don't get American money. When it comes to security on our streets, a lot of it is street crime. And you know what happens with street crime? If you have the backs of your law enforcement officers and you let them do their job, you take care of half the problem. The only other thing is we need to give them a raise and thank them for what they do. We need to listen to our Border Patrol. We need to go back to the Remain in Mexico policy. We need to make sure that we do what I did in South Carolina. We passed E-Verify, Arizona-style E-Verify in South Carolina, which said no business could ever hire anyone that was here illegally. Those jobs are for Americans. If anyone wants a job, they have to be here legally. When we did that in South Carolina, all of them stopped coming to South Carolina because there was no jobs. And we made businesses prove it. They had to go through the E-Verify system, and if they got caught, they got punished. We have to start taking this seriously. We are a country of laws. The second you stop being a country of laws, you give up everything this country was founded on. So we need to secure the border. We need E-Verify. We need to let the world know we'll happily welcome you, but you have to prove that you deserve to be here, and we need to do it on merit. Only then will that happen. And then when it comes to foreign policy, we need to understand that when you start telling countries what the United States expects of them and stop being reactionary, they will all step back in line. We need to strengthen our military in a way that they know we mean business. We need to make sure that we let them know if you fly a Chinese spy balloon, it's never even going to get near us. And no, you don't get to condemn us. We're going to hold you accountable, and you're going to feel the pain of it. When you look at what China is doing today, they have created a surveillance state, and we're watching it happen. Republicans and Democrats thought that if we were nice to China, they would want to be like us. They don't want to be like us. They are communists. We need to start treating them like the communists that they are and hold them to account. So all of these solutions, we need to do them all. But the only way we're really going to get it done, we got to have term limits in Congress. We've got to have term limits in Congress. We need to have competency tests for elected officials over the age of 75. We do. That's not being disrespectful, that's transparency. Elected officials work for the people, not the other way around. And Bernie Sanders lost his mind yesterday. For those that are defensive about it, you are exactly the reason we need it. You don't tell your people no. And then the one threat over everything I've told you that we absolutely have to fix. A national self-loathing has taken over our country. The idea that people are now saying that America is bad or rotten to the core or racist. Let me tell you, from the first minority female governor in the country, America is not a racist country. It's not. America is not perfect, and our goal every day should be to make today better than yesterday. But the principles at the heart of America are perfect. We have to remember that. Our children, I want our children to love America. I want our children to fight for America. I want us to remember what it felt like. Do you remember what you felt like when you were growing up? Do you remember how you felt about America? Do you remember it was all about family and church and country? That's where we need to go, and we can get there. It's not going to be easy, but it can happen. Because I will tell you, I don't want this country for my children. You deserve better. Every one of you deserve better. But the way we will get better is not through faint hearts or watered down compromises. It's by boldly proclaiming what our national purpose is. We have to end this socialism. We have to end this defeatism. And we have to understand that this country is still the best country on earth, and she deserves our love. So now is the time. Now is the time we can say we're not going to complain about it. Now is the time we're going to say we're going to do something about it. But it's going to take every single one of you to be a part of the solution. Now, when I ran against that 30-year incumbent, they all laughed at me. They said, she can't do it. But the people took a chance on me, and we won. When I ran for governor, I ran against a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a state senator, and a very popular congressman. I had the least amount of money, but I had the biggest spirit. And with the people of South Carolina, we won. When I went to the United Nations, they all said I didn't have the experience to do it. And then I got to work. And with all of us, we proved that America was still the standard. When we speak, the world listens. What we do, the world follows. Who we are, the world wants to be. Now we got to do it one more time. And let me tell you, you know the one thing we need? The one thing I need you to commit to is we need to send a badass Republican woman to the White House. If you join with me, that's when we will right the ship. Look, I am the daughter of immigrant parents who know that this country is better than what we have today. I am the wife of a combat veteran, and I know the sacrifice that those soldiers and the military families go through, and the love we all have at the fact they're willing to defend our freedom. I am the mother of 2 children. And my daughter is getting married, and I see how hard it is for them to figure out how to buy a house. And my son is in college, and I see how he's having to write papers that he doesn't believe in just to get an A. That's not okay. We're gonna stop this. We're gonna make it right. But more than that, I am a proud American that knows our best days are ahead of us. So if you will join with me, we will win our country back. We will love our country again. We will stand strong for our country, and we will be proud of America. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now, I am not going to have you just come listen to me. That wouldn't be fun. So we're going to open it up for some questions. There's nothing I won't answer. You may not like my answer, but there's nothing I won't answer. Yes, sir, you want to have the first question?
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Lovely speech. Real specific question, however. Right now we're engaged in an activity in Ukraine where a totalitarian government is attempting to overtake a country that it invaded. And right now we do not have the support of the largest democracy in the world, which is India. Do you have a suggestion or a recipe for how to bring Narendra Modi on board?
So first, let's acknowledge the war in Ukraine, then let's go to India. First of all, the war in Ukraine, it's more than just about Ukraine. This is a war about freedom, and it's a war we have to win. Because what we saw with Obama, he let Russia go right into Crimea and basically told Putin we're not going to do anything. When Putin saw Biden fall with Afghanistan, he knew this was his time to go again and try and take more. The reason this matters If you notice when the conflict first happened, everybody said 5 days they'd be gone. But look at what the Ukrainians did. The idea that the men went and left their wives and their children, and they went and fought for their freedom. The idea that the women said, I'm not sitting still, and they started making Molotov cocktails to help their husbands. The spirit that they have had trying to save their country. We used to have that. That used to be us. And they've made inroads. And so now you look, over 200,000 Russians have died. They basically have raised the draft age in Russia to 65. Think about that. You know they've hit rock bottom when they're getting drones from Iran and missiles from North Korea. All of this would have been further along if Biden would have reacted hard and fast in the very beginning. If we win this fight for freedom, it will send a signal to every enemy we have. If we lose this fight for freedom, Russia has said Poland and the Baltics are next, and then we've got a world war. A strong military doesn't start wars. A strong military prevents wars. Our goal has to be strong enough that we prevent the next war. So I am just as disappointed that India has not been there, but I get it. Do you know why? India has always had a military relationship with Russia. But the reason India isn't with us, they don't trust that we'll win. They don't trust that we have the spirit to finish this. They don't know that we're not going to cut and run and leave Ukraine. That's the problem. India has to know that we're going to be there. And that's why we have to finish this. This doesn't mean we ever should put troops on the ground, and it doesn't mean we should ever write blank checks. I am never forgiving money. I'm forgiving military equipment, ammunition, so that they can do the job themselves. But we have to prove to India we're not going anywhere. And we need to get all those other NATO countries and say, what are you giving? What are you giving? Because this is not just us. They have more at stake than we do, and they need to pony up, and we need to make sure that they do that. We'll get India. We just have to stick to our guns and make sure that we're tough about it.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm up here from Kansas City, so
Oh,
welcome you
welcome.
to Missouri.
Welcome to Iowa.
We all know that our southern border situation is a mess, and you alluded to the numbers before. And I've heard and read a few of your ideas about how to fix the immigration, but can you elaborate on what your ideas are for getting us past this stalemate and getting an effective immigration law in this country?
You know, this is really where we have to go in. I've never held an office in Washington, D.C. And so I'm very impatient with what's happening right now. We have to light a fire under them. They love to go on TV and talk about it. But when I had problems in South Carolina, I would go put them in a room and say, you're not leaving until we figure this out. For the good of our country, we have to sort through this immigration system. I don't think we give anyone a pass. I think we use the E-Verify system, but I think we look and say, what does our country need? Because I know of manufacturers in South Carolina, and they need plant managers, and they can't get them because they need certain ones. We go and have all of these students come from overseas, and we educate them in our schools, and what do? We turn around and send them right back right after we train them. That makes no sense. We need to do this based on merit. We need to do it on who do we need in this country that will make us better. That's what it comes down to. And so for me, that's where it is. They're all going to want to talk about DACA, right? They're all going to want to work on. The difference is, no, we don't talk about DACA until you pass immigration reform. Then we'll talk about DACA and we'll do it. It doesn't come before, it comes after. Any questions back here? Yes, sir. Mr. America, right here.
Well, I got a question. Probably a lot of the people perhaps Iowa carried for Trump. And so why should we vote for you in the caucus instead of perhaps someone like Trump?
Because I don't think you have to be 80 years old to be in D.C. I really don't. President Trump is my friend. I think he was the right president at the right time. He came in, he broke the things that needed to be broken, and he fixed them, and I was proud to serve in his cabinet. But we, as dire of a situation as this is, as much as all the media and everybody wants to talk about the past, we need to leave the status quo in the past. We've got work to do. We've got to look forward. We've got to figure out what we're going to do for America. This is bigger than a person. This is bigger than a person. And we need to fight for that. And so what I'm telling you is we need to make sure that we've got the energy, the power, and the ability to bring more people in that will see that our solutions are the right ones, because we believe in lifting up everybody, not a select few. Yes, sir.
Hi, it's a pleasure to meet with you. I'm an American veteran. I served over in Afghanistan, and thank you. Also a small business, disabled veteran-owned business, and the retail sales. And they have the programs was set aside for veteran-owned businesses as far as government contracts and so forth. It's a system called AC Nelson Data System that's keeping veteran-owned business from entering to government contracts. What is it that you would do to turn that around, to give us that opportunity for the big corporations to allow small business to get in?
So I'll tell you what we did in South Carolina. In South Carolina, I set up an entire veteran small business system. But it went two ways. One, it was a way to market all of our veteran small businesses to the industry that we had brought to South Carolina. The other was it created a pipeline of all the veterans that needed jobs. And we started connecting businesses with veterans and really making that network happen. And so South Carolina was named one of the most patriotic states in the country because of everything we did for veterans. We owe you a debt of gratitude. We owe your family a debt of gratitude. You shouldn't have to look to find anything. We should be finding you. That's what hasn't happened. So we have to find the veterans and say, come with us. These companies need help. This is what we do. Oh, Young G's barbecue sauce. So I want to just give you a little jump start to what a presidency is going to look like. I want everybody to go out and buy some Young G's barbecue sauce today. Give that man a thank you and buy a case of this stuff. God bless you. Thank you very much. All right, Andrew, where are you? Oh.
Here.
Okay.
We'll do one more over here and then come to you, sir.
And then I pointed to her, so we have to do her too.
Okay.
So I'm Nathaniel Gavronski, for people who don't know me, and I work with people with disabilities. So people like Congresswoman Miller Meeks and Carol with Grassie's office, they know me quite well. And any legislators here in the state of Iowa know me very well on disability issues. People who live on disability through SSI, SSDI, who were not able to work enough to have retirement savings, it's the highest part of our society that commits suicide because they do not have enough money to live on. I know a few people who are living in an abandoned trailer off I-35 because they have a wheelchair and they can't get housing and have their wheelchair because Medicaid and Medicare won't approve a wheelchair if you don't have an approved housing situation. The increased COLA that happened last year was only like 9%. However, most of the people who are in this room that are on Social Security know if it was only that they lived off of, they couldn't survive. What are you going to do in whatever regards that you are in the next administration to improve people who have nothing else to live off of? Thank you.
Well, I'll give you, I keep going back to my time as governor because it's the only way I can prove to you results of what I've done. What we did in South Carolina is we took everybody, we had thousands of people on welfare, on assistance, all of those. And what we did was, I said, how can we go and lift them up? How do we go and give them a better life? How do we make them more productive than what they are right now? So I got with my businesses, and I partnered with them So instead of giving them a check, I went and said to the business, I will go and pay for this person to work for you. All I'm asking is for you to train them. So for X number of weeks, if you will train them, at the end of it, you decide if you want to hire them. We moved thousands of people from welfare to work. Do you know why that happened? Is because one, that person wanted to be productive. They wanted a job. They wanted someone, and they wanted dignity. And the business desperately needed workers. And by the time they had invested all that time into training, neither one of them wanted to let go. That's what you do. You look for those that need help, and you match them with people that can give the help. But you do it in a way that's productive, that people aren't sitting there feeling down on themselves. You do it in a way where they feel loved and they feel like they're getting better and they're improving as a person. That's what we have to do in America. It can be done. It takes work. We will find a service for you to do. Everybody should feel worth. Everybody should feel worth. And there is always something we can do to help you. Oh, I think we had the veteran. Yes, we had our veteran, and then we had.
We'll do one more question here and then one over there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I happen to have been in Vietnam when we got kicked out, and I watched it fall less than 2 years later. So I know what people like your husband must feel after what we did in Afghanistan. And I'm proud to know that Zach Nunn was one of my friends who organized getting people out of there on his own.
He's a good one. He's a good one.
We have the greatest contingency of legislators in any state. They all work with us very hard. Miller Meeks, I've got some paperwork that I'll be bringing you in about 2 weeks. Because we go out there twice a year. But one of the issues we've got right now that's a big one, we just got the PACT Act passed, which is toxic issues for veterans to get them help. Our biggest push is going to be the Major Richard Starr Act. Major Richard Starr was kicked out of the military because he had been wounded. He was close to being able to retire. Because this happened, he was given a choice. Either you take your disability or you take your retirement. That is wrong. You wouldn't do it to any business in this. So my question is, we want this to pass, and listening to you earlier when you said about all the money we're wasting, the biggest issue that we get said, it's hard to get this kind of bill passed because of what it costs. Well, it cost this man his life. He was buried in September while we were out there. So what is the price? But we're giving money to build a golf course in New York, and we're
Colorado, $6.5 million.
and we're telling
Yes.
veterans there's not enough money to get them the care. So my question for you, and by the way, this lady here is a Iraqi combat veteran.
God bless you. Thank you.
So my question for you is, I've got some papers I'd like you to have on the VFW's issues. My question for you is, would you support the Richard Starr Act if it came across your desk?
I am the wife of a combat veteran. I am a military wife. I know the sacrifices that all of our military go through. I know the sacrifices our families go to. There is nothing I won't do to make sure we thank our veterans and never let them feel an ounce of pain because they fought for us. We have to always fight for you. Yes, yes, yes. I can get Cheney to get the information from you, and we can get you that information. Okay, last question. Make it a
Okay,
great one.
Last question, ma'am. Here we go.
Oh, no pressure there whatsoever. Okay, so mine is going to go a little bit more in that healthcare pharma world, okay? Because we all know pharma is a hot mess. And I would say that with a lot of the reliance of the import of a lot of our drugs and stuff like that, rather than manufacturing at home, is a big issue, especially for a lot of our seniors, different things like that. But then necessarily bringing it in-house, I think the trust of the pharma industry is at an all-time low. and reliance of like high price cost and all that other stuff. What's your plan on bringing really good control, not only in that healthcare sector, but really specifically for that pharma, and making sure people get the meds that they need when they need it?
So that's a great question. You know, I have my parents, they live with us. We take care of them. They are 86 and 89. And I know. And they just celebrated their 62nd wedding anniversary last night, so we were really proud of them. So I see what they go through. I see the paperwork. I see how expensive those drugs are, and I see the number of seniors who are having to decide between eating and taking their medicine. We have a whole healthcare issue that has to be dealt with. And the one thing that cures that healthcare issue is transparency. We have to open them up. Why can't they tell us what things cost? When you go get your car and you get the oil changed, they don't change it without telling you what the estimate is. And then you give them the okay and they do it. Why is it when you go in a hospital, if you don't want the Tylenol, you pay for it anyway? Why is it that insurance companies negotiate your costs and you have nothing to do with it? Why is it? Because they don't want you to see all the hidden costs. We have to go and make sure we open up a lot of sectors. We need to see transparency with the pharmaceutical industry. We need to see transparency with the hospitals. We need to see transparency with the doctor's offices, and we need tort reform because they don't give you those 10 tests because they want to. They do it for the 90% chance they'll get sued if they don't give you those tests. So when you go and you open up that entire system and say, we're not picking on one industry, we're not just going to do the pharmaceutical, we're going to do everybody. Everybody should have to show us why they charge us what they charge us. And if they say, oh, but we have to pay for those that don't pay, then show us. Because right now, when you can go and have a deal in a back room about Jane Doe who's sitting in a hospital room, something's wrong with that. We'll open it up and we'll make sure that we call everybody out. Transparency fixes a lot of things, and I've always been a transparency girl. So thank you very much. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come out. I want you to know that, first of all, if you are willing to join our movement, I don't need to tell you how important Iowa is. You know it, or all these cameras wouldn't be sitting back here. What I'm going to ask you is, if you like what I had to say, go tell 10 people to go to NikkiHaley.com. If you want to be part of our movement and you want to see what it's like to feel good about your country again, go to NikkiHaley.com. If you want to know what it's like to have your kids proud and you want to stand for America, go to NikkiHaley.com. But first, help me thank the best governor in the entire country, Kim Reynolds. More than that, we should all be honored because her husband, Kevin, came with her, the first gentleman. You grow them really strong around here, but one of them you grow strong is Marionette Miller Meeks, and she's fantastic, and we're super proud of her. And Kelly, thank you for your help. We appreciate everything. Thank you to Royal Flooring. Thank you, Iowa. God bless you. See you next time.